I discovered the haunted secrets behind the "come home" thriller that could never be revealed. I never should have opened that door. The moment I did, a chill swept over me, curling around my spine like icy fingers. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage, as I stepped into the darkness. My day had started so ordinarily. I'd sipped my coffee, scrolling through mundane details, pretending everything was fine. But that door, slightly ajar, whispered my name in a voice that gnawed at my very core. The air turned still, heavy with dread. Shadows danced along the walls, taunting me, drawing me in. The room was cloaked in a shroud of cold. I could smell dampness, the scent of decay lingering like a forgotten memory. It crept into my lungs, curling like smoke. A soft rustling echoed behind me, and I jerked around, expecting to confront a reality more terrifying than my imagination. Nothing. Just the oppressive silence. I took another step, and the floor creaked beneath my feet, a groan punctuating the stillness. I felt my pulse quicken. The walls seemed to close in, the very fabric of the house becoming alive with a sinister heartbeat. Was it just me? Or was something watching? Suddenly, a soft whisper floated through the air, slithering into my ears. "Come home." The sound was almost melodic, yet it sent a shockwave of panic through me. Who was calling me? An unseen presence swirled around, shadows flickering like candle flames, revealing secrets best left untouched. I staggered backward, but something, or someone, brushed past me. I spun, heart in my throat. All I saw was a flicker, a dark shape at the edge of my vision, slipping away like a dream upon waking. My breath caught, the room vibrating with an energy I couldn't comprehend. An object on the shelf rattled, teetering as I backed away, uncertainty flooding my chest. A mirror glinted in the darkness, holding a distorted reflection of me, wide-eyed and trembling. There was a sudden crash behind me, a book tumbling from the shelf onto the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Get out!" It was a shriek, pitiful, chilling. My entire being screamed in protest, yet my feet wouldn't move. I was rooted, encased in fear. The very essence of dread seeped into my bones. I fought the urge to run, convinced that running would mean leaving something behind. Then, in the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure. Just lingering there, half-formed in the shadows. My hands shook. My chest felt tight, like a vice squeezing the breath from my lungs. "Who are you?" I choked out, my voice barely a whisper, breaking under the weight of my fear. The thing stepped closer, and suddenly, the world felt unbearably heavy. A scream clawed its way up my throat, ready to break free. Just as I opened my mouth, the door slammed shut behind me with a thunderous bang, the darkness swallowing me whole. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness enveloped me like a cold blanket, thick and suffocating, pressing in from all sides. Panic surged in my veins, pulsing with a frantic rhythm that echoed the throbbing in my head. My instincts screamed for me to flee, but the oppressive grip of fear held me hostage. I was trapped in this sinister space, with something lurking just beyond comprehension. Every breath felt heavier than the last, as if the air itself was saturated with despair. I staggered forward, struggling to keep my mind clear, searching for anything that might offer Clarissa a glimmer of hope in the encompassing void. The familiar rustle of unseen movement skittered around me, sending shivers cascading down my spine. With trembling hands, I reached out into the dark, fingers brushing against the rough plaster of the wall. It felt alive under my touch, the surface pulsing, as if the house itself were breathing, drawing me deeper into its hidden horrors. The air crackled with a charge I couldn't ignore, a promise of intimidation and revelation wrapped in an invisible embrace. I was not alone, come home." The whisper came again, this time clearer, a cacophony of longing and despair harmonizing into a desperate symphony. I turned, snapping my head in the direction of the voice, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I glimpsed a silhouette, long limbs stretching, fingers clawing through the air, pleading for something unrealized. The edges of my vision warped, creating nightmares from the fabric of my reality. A sudden cold swept over me, sending a deep chill into my bones. I turned again, eyes darting, searching for the source of this grotesque apparition. As my heart raced, the shadow danced just out of reach, teasing me with endless possibilities. I felt the walls pulse with my own heartbeat, as if they were drawing power from my fear, feeding on the palpable despair that had replaced my once ordinary life. Desperation wrapped itself around me like a serpent, and I forced myself to move forward, step after halting step, forcing back the tricks my mind played, all the visions and whispers that begged me to turn back. There was something in this room, something desperately longing for connection, begging for understanding. And yet, the instinct to flee clawed at my insides with a ferocity I couldn't shake. "Get out!" the shriek returned, resonating through the air, ripping away my thoughts like a veil. It was both a warning and a plea. The force behind those words pierced me, pulling me across the room toward the mirror that shone like a solitary star in the vast expanse of darkness. My reflection stared back hollow, wide-eyed, a mere specter of who I once was. Suddenly, the glass warped, forming surreal images of faces, their mouths moving in silent agony. The room trembled, a cacophony of tortured souls wailing, layering their cries over my increasingly frayed nerves. I felt the weight of their centuries-old anguish pressing in, an unbearable leaden weight that threatened to swallow me whole. Then, the shadow shifted, a figure taking form amidst the chaos, creeping closer until it loomed directly in my line of sight. My heart stopped. It was a woman, her face obscured by tangled dark hair, eyes glowing with a ghostly luminescence. Her expression was a twisted mask of longing and despair, and I felt an inexplicable urge to reach out, to console her. Instead, a guttural growl filled the air, pulsating through the very marrow of my bones. The woman's face contorted, morphing from sorrow into something more sinister, something not meant for the living. The darkness behind her swelled, twisting and convulsing as though it were alive, bearing witness to horrors untold. "Join us," she hissed, and without warning, the air crackled once more. The ground beneath me quaked, and a chill that went beyond any physical cold seeped into my very essence. I felt a tether snap inside me, the pull toward the darkness growing insatiable, the whispering cries of the lost echoing louder, drowning out every rational thought. And then, in that moment of despair, I felt a hand grasping my wrist, cold as death, pulling me into the void. I screamed, the sound barely escaping my throat as darkness swallowed everything whole. In the pitch black, I heard the voices of countless souls rising in a cacophony, drowning me in their torment. "Come home, come home." I was no longer in control, swept away by the despairing tide of the damned. As I felt myself being dragged down, hope faded, replaced by a crushing dread that I would never escape this haunted existence, and just as suddenly, the darkness shattered with searing light illuminating a room. But it was not the room I had entered, it was something far worse. Mirrors lined the walls, reflecting countless versions of myself, each one stretched in terror, trapped behind the glass, mouths agape in silent screams. And at the center of it all, in the heart of the horror that threatened to consume me, the woman stood, now grinning a malevolent grin that promised no escape. "Welcome home," she purred, her shadow stretching out like dark tendrils, reaching for me. I took a step back, but the ground shifted beneath my feet, and the mirrors began to crack, one by one, the sound echoing like thunder through the desolate realm. I knew then, I was utterly trapped, caught between two worlds, and everything I had feared was just beginning. The cracking continued, each sound a harbinger of despair. Jagged fissures spiderwebbed through the nearest mirror, its surface rippling with each fracture until it resembled water disturbed by a thrown stone. My reflection, once a part of me, now looked tortured and twisted, a caricature of my own growing horror. The air vibrated with palpable malevolence, and I could feel the walls compressing, pushing me towards the shadows that danced at the edges of reality. That I stumbled backward, my heart racing anew, as the woman's expression shifted again, her smile splitting wider, teeth sharp as daggers. "You made it just in time," she crooned, her voice a liquid silk, laced with poison. The shadows writhed behind her like dark serpents, striking out toward me, hungry for my lingering essence that I turned, desperate to flee, knowing I had to escape this confounding maze of mirrors. But the path twisted in ways I could never predict, leading me deeper into that heart of despair. Each step felt heavy, as if I was moving through thick mud, the very air thickening with an oppressive force that strained my lungs. The whispers rose, their chorus grew frenzied. The walls pulsated rhythmically as I darted between mirrors, bodies clawing at the glass from within, their eyes wide with silent pleas. Each face was familiar yet foreign, a distortion of those I had loved and lost, a tapestry of grief woven from the threads of my memories. A mother, a sibling, friends long gone. Each mirror held a fragment of my story, a part of my soul, trapped within, begging for release. Don't listen to them. I screamed, but my voice was lost amid the crowd of anguished spirits crying out for a savior that would never come. My own reflection began to shift, a hand raised in silent warning, as if pleading for me to stay away. Terror coursed through me as I realized that each image, each fragment, reflected a choice I had made, a road not traveled, a life unlived. Suddenly, that frantic chase ahead morphed into a desperate retreat. I turned to the last mirror standing, the one devoid of cracks, its surface smooth, almost inviting. Its tranquil sheen beckoned me forward as if it held answers wrapped in shadows, something that could illuminate the darkness filling my heart. I felt the pull deeper than fear, thicker than grief. I was drawn to it as if it had become the only window of light in an inescapable night. No. The woman's voice boomed, raising the very temperature of despair around me. Shadows roared, now fully animated, reaching out like claws of night, grasping at my limbs with icy precision. You can't escape the truth. You belong to us now. Before I could make a decision, a momentary lapse gave way to instinct. I lunged for the mirror, hoping it would serve as a portal, a way out of this twisted space. My fingers barely brushed the surface when the world jolted, the glass shattering into a shower of light. Instead of freeing me, the shards arced through the air, creating a spectacle of glittering destruction. The bright light bathed the room in eerie brilliance, transforming the nightmares that filled the reflections into horrid caricatures that screamed in ecstatic violation. Then, a voice cut through the cacophony, familiar and strange, a resonance that tugged at the deepest parts of my heart. You have to remember, it cried, remember who you are. The shadows recoiled as if hurt, the woman screeched with rage as the reflections began to swirl around me, their faces contorting with malice. You are nothing without us. She shrieked, and I felt the darkness surging, clawing at the corners of my mind, threatening to drag me back into the abyss I had fought so fervently against. Remember. The voice echoed again, insistent, and though I couldn't place its source, it felt like a lifeline thrown into tumultuous waters, and then something shattered within, memories flooding back. Laughter and love, moments of radiant joy mingled with haunting anguish, enveloped me like a warm embrace. I thought of home, my true home. Each memory pulsed through my veins, igniting a fire within that even the darkness could not snuff out. But then, from the shadows, those faces I thought I knew twisted into a different narrative. The truth behind their longing converged, a raw reality reflected back at me. Perhaps I had never left them behind, and they had never truly let me go. The light flickered, the shadows surged, and as the figures in the mirror started to coalesce into a singular form, a final embodiment of my darkest fears, I felt the ground quaking beneath my feet. In my panic, I reached for anything to anchor myself, bracing against the large mirror, only to see the woman's eyes flare with unholy triumph. You will join us soon. Suddenly, the floor buckled as the mirror shattered, sending shards ripping through the air, and a blinding light engulfed everything. I felt the very fibers of reality tearing apart, unraveling like a worn thread, and in that moment, suspended between understanding and chaos, I gasped. Everything went dark as I fell, and out of the shadows surged the figures, my family, my friends' faces forever lost but now closer than ever, their voices rising once more in that haunting cry, "Come home." When consciousness returned, it felt like being dragged back from the depths of a fevered dream. The world coalesced slowly, draped in a thick silence, and as I blinked against the dim light, I realized I lay on cold, hard stone. My surroundings came into focus. Ancient walls encased me, their surfaces slick with moisture, reflecting an eerie glow that illuminated patches of bizarre symbols etched deep into the rock. The chill that enveloped me morphed into a crawling sensation at the back of my neck, as if unseen eyes lingered within the shadows. The memories flickered like dying embers in my mind, but within the pressing gloom, I could still sense the malevolent pull of the woman and the restless spirits, their desires woven tightly around my very essence that I struggled to rise, my fingers digging into the stone as I fought against a pervading sense of dread that anchored me down. What had happened? Had I fallen through the mirror only to emerge in another realm of this nightmare? My gaze swept across the chamber, and I recoiled, heart pounding anew. Statues lined the walls, grotesque visages twisted in rapture, mouths stretched wide in silent screams. They appeared almost human yet unmistakably wrong, contorted in ways that mangled recognition. Each figure bore a resemblance to someone I had once known, trapped in eternal agony. Their sorrow seeped through the air like thick smog that I pushed myself to my feet, breathing heavily as the air thickened, stinging the insides of my lungs. I sensed something moving among the shadow's edges, a heartbeat echoing the rhythm of my pulse. Fear turned my resolve brittle. I had to escape this wretched place. As I crept cautiously toward the archway ahead, something brushed against my ankle. I half turned, instinct kicking in, but it was too late. A flicker of movement sent a shiver of cold panic surging through me as a small, skeletal hand shot out from the darkness, fingers clawing at my leg. I gasped, wrenching my foot away, but the tiny figure surged forward with unexpected strength, its sunken eyes radiating a desperate longing. "Help us!" It croaked, voice rasping like dry leaves scraping against stone. It was a child, or had once been one, wrapped in tattered rags, its skin pale and stretched taut against bony protrusions. I could see the remnants of innocence in its haunted expression, and for just a moment, an unfamiliar ache blossomed within me. "Let me go!" I cried, but its grasp tightened, locking me in place. Other whispers echoed around me, drawing closer, voices that merged with the child's, their longing palpable. "You cannot escape. You belong here, with us." Desperation clawed at me anew. I wrenched my leg free and sprinted past the archway into the corridor beyond, but a shiver of dread clawed at my spine as I heard it louder, high-pitched and manic, threading through the air like a noxious fog. It enveloped me, driving the breath from my lungs, anchoring me to the fears I'd thought I had escaped. As I pressed on, the laughter morphed into a cacophony of names, me name twisted and distorted, echoing endlessly alongside 100 lost voices. The walls began to pulse by my sides, as if alive, responding to my panic. Images flowed from the stone in a wavy, swirling murk of my past unwound before me, memories flickering in and out like fading stars that I stumbled, the ground beneath me vibrating with a sinister energy. I caught glimpses of faces new and old, their features shifting and morphing as shadows draped themselves over their forms, blurring the line between beloved and damned. Each visage bore a reflection of my choices, the moments I had sought to forget clawing their way back up, demanding acknowledgement. "Come home," the whispers gnawed at my sanity, and I could feel the walls closing in. I ran, feverishly, until I reached a massive door at the end of the corridor. It towered over me, intricately carved, an ominous guardian watching closely. Just as my fingers brushed the cold metal of the handle, the laughter crescendoed, erupting into a nightmarish wail. The air thickened, swirling, with shadows that clawed and pulled at my limbs, as if the very walls sought to drag me back into the chaos. "Remember," the child's voice screamed, now dull with the weight of lost hope. "You must choose." With one final surge of adrenaline, I ripped the door open, crashing through the threshold into a chamber washed in an eerie phosphorescent glow. And there she stood, the woman of mirrored horrors, her smile gleaming with sinister delight amid the chaos. "Welcome to the heart of your nightmare," she sang, arms outstretched, shadows crawling up her figure like hungry snakes. In that instant, I knew this was no escape. As the portal to the truth yawned wide before me, I felt the ground tremble and the walls shift, blurring the lines between the past and present. What had I truly left behind? Just as her grasp reached for my throat, illuminating everything I had ever feared, the chamber began to pulse, locking me into an inescapable fate. I was left gasping for breath as she leaned closer, her voice dripping with sweet venom. "You've come home, my dear," and before I could utter a sound, my heartbeat synchronized with the thunder of footsteps reverberating through the hall. The forgotten souls were coming for me, reclaimed by the darkness, and I realized with chilling clarity I was far from alone. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me with a resounding echo as the shadows surged forward, their voices melding into a single command that chilled me to my core: "Stay." I stood paralyzed, the sudden finality of the doors slamming echoing in my mind like the tolling of a death knell. Around me, the air pulsed with invisible energy, each beat reverberating in sync with the urgent thrum of my heart. The woman's laughter swirled around me, a melody of madness that promised release along with doom, teasing the boundaries of my reason. Stay, the shadows whispered again, their voices a banquet of despair. I felt a chill seep into my bones, visceral and deep, gnawing at the very essence of who I was. The realization crashed over me. I could never truly leave this place. There was a part of me entwined here, perhaps even a part one had willingly given away, with no option but to confront the terrors enveloping me. I turned to face the woman, whose presence seemed to stretch and shimmer with the malevolence of the souls that lingered nearby. Her eyes, a swirling vortex of past lives, locked onto mine with a precision that drew me into the depths of my own soul. "What do you want from me?" I gasped, my throat tight with dread, my mind reeling. The shadows slithered closer, humming with anticipation, coiling around my limbs like restless serpents. "That we want you to remember," she crooned, each word dripping honeyed malice. "All those precious memories buried deep, the ones you thought were lost forever. They're what bind you to this realm." A glimmer of recognition sparked in the recesses of my mind, igniting a flame of fear. Her words rang true. There were fragments of my past I had buried, ghosts that I had banished to the back of my consciousness. But why had I left them behind? A painful sadness washed over me as I began to piece together the moments that had shaped my Lithia life that hung suspended in the discordant realms of memory. "Set them free," she whispered, her breath chilling as it grazed my cheek, "and you too shall be free." The air warped around me, and I felt an unbearable weight settle upon my shoulders. The tormented souls of the lost began to coalesce, swirling into recognition, faces of loved ones, victims of my neglect and mistakes, their features twisting into despair. The child with the skeletal hand emerged from the mass, eyes wide with a pleading that pierced through the veil of darkness. "Save us or join us." It whispered frantically, the urgency of its tone sending another jolt of panic through my veins. The others shifted restlessly behind it, their whispers rising in a crescendo until the cacophony resonated through the chamber like a storm about to break. That I took a shuddering step back, the weight of their collective sorrow pressing against my chest. "I didn't mean to leave you," I yelled, desperation clawing at my voice. "I didn't want any of this." "We know," the woman replied softly, a predatory smile dancing upon her lips, her eyes shining like shards of ice. "But now you have to make a choice. Will you let the door open for them, or will you seal it shut?" The urgency of the moment seized my heart. There was a power in my hands, a deep well of untapped emotion that could either save these souls or condemn them alongside me. I could feel the chamber quaking as the souls pressed against invisible walls, their faces blurring with fear as they floated between life and oblivion. "Choose." Her voice trembled with glee, her outstretched fingers beckoning me toward the glowing portal that pulsed at the far side of the chamber. "Join your history or haunt this realm forever." The whispers around me grew louder, a tempest of agony and longing, urging me to both venture into the unknown and to remember everything I had lost. My heart ached with indecision, each moment stretching into an eternity as I wrestled with the weight of their suffering. Just as I felt the tide shifting, a violent tremor shook the ground beneath me, and the shadows coiled tighter around my legs, anchoring me in place, drawing me toward oblivion. I glanced back to the portal, but the walls of reality flickered, warping with every second, the nightmarish laughter reaching a fever pitch. "Make your choice," the woman intoned, her voice now a cruel echo. In the hollow chamber, and then, with horror swelling in my chest, I noticed the portal starting to close, darkness spilling forth to consume the light as it shrank away. The moment felt charged, electric, and in a mad rush, I leaped toward it, desperate for answers, redemption, anything to silence the wayward soul's cries that bound me tight. But as my fingers grasped the edge, I felt an icy grip on my wrist pulling me back with a force that was crushing and omnipotent. My scream was swallowed by the shadows as time twisted around me, and in that pulse of frozen panic, I understood that I had no way of knowing what lay beyond that portal, only that if I did not act fast, I would lose everything. Then I heard her voice, soft and compelling, laced with a promise as dark as the icy grip that held me. "You have chosen, but what you find may shatter your very being." And as the portal closed, the child's scream pierced through the encroaching darkness. "No. Don't leave us." Suddenly, everything went still, the world around me collapsing into a weighty silence filled with unshed grief. And just as I thought this moment would be my undoing, I found myself staring into the abyss, an inexplicable rift opening beneath my feet, ready to swallow me whole. The shadows swarmed like locusts, and I felt their cold breath on the back of my neck, whispering dreadful promises of what was to come. As I plummeted into the darkness, I gasped for air, comprehension dawning. The real terror was only beginning. Falling through the abyss felt like an eternity, time distorted as I plummeted through a darkness that twisted and churned with an intelligence of its own. The air crackled with tension, charged with an electric pulse that whispered secrets too monstrous to comprehend. My thoughts fragmented, scattering like shards of glass, each piece reflecting a nightmare I wasn't ready to face. Finally, I hit the ground, not with a jarring slam, but rather a soft landing, as if the darkness itself had conspired to cushion my descent. I lay there, disoriented, enveloped in a thick fog that obscured my vision and suffocated my senses. It wrapped around me, heavy and oppressive, whispering disjointed fragments of the past that clawed at my memory. Find us, remember us, the voices echoed, muffled yet desperate, spinning around me like a haunting wind. I staggered to my feet, shaking the days from my mind. As the fog began to lift, I stumbled into a landscape marred by decay, where time had forgotten its passage. Distorted trees clawed at a leaden sky, their bark gnarled and twisted like the fingers of the damned. The remnants of a once familiar world lay sprawled before me, a dilapidated house that seemed to breathe and shudder as if alive. The structure loomed, shadows writhing beneath eaves where no light dared to tread. I stepped forward, drawn by an invisible thread that urged me against my better instincts. Each cautious stride was met with the low groans of the earth beneath my feet, an echo of lamentation that sent a chill racing through my veins. I approached the door, the wood darkened by anguish and neglect, etched with cryptic symbols that pulsed faintly. The air thrummed, thickening with every heartbeat, a siren call beckoning me closer. Open it, the voice of the woman seduced from the depths, more insistent now, echoing like a cruel hymn. Let the past enfold you. Face what remains. Glancing over my shoulder, I saw the dark figures converge on me, a swirling mass of shadows with eyes glimmering like crescent moons filled with sorrow. I could feel them tugging at my essence, yearning to ensnare me in their suffocating grip. Was this what they had sought, a captive audience, a misplaced soul to illuminate their forgotten tales? I pressed my palm against the door, feeling it pulse against my skin, a heartbeat drumming in time with the shadows that swirled like a tempest behind me. Something inside me screamed to turn back, to escape the clutches of this damnable place. Yet, the memory of the children's face-shallowed eyes pleading for release anchored me in place. With a shattering breath, I shoved the door open, and it creaked as if a great weight had been lifted. The air inside was thick, tangible, its essence brewing with dread, swirling like a storm ready to erupt. Stepping through, I was met with the chilling embrace of an even darker reality. The walls were adorned with peeling wallpaper depicting scenes of torment that flickered, almost alive. Each image displayed silhouettes of figures lost in a torment of their own, twisting in agony as they reached toward me through the wall like forgotten memories yearning for recognition. Help us, they pleaded, their voices weaving an unbearable tapestry of misery. Don't leave us. Remember, in the center of the room stood a mirror, tall and ornate, the glass swirling like quicksilver. As I approached hesitantly, a wave of nausea surged through me. Reflection twisted, revealing not just my own visage, but the faces of those I once knew. Friends and family, lost to the echoes of history, horror etched into their features as they silently screamed for a remnant of what had been stolen. Suddenly, the room began to swirl, the walls breathing in a ghastly rhythm that quickened with my heartbeat. The whispering turned into a symphony of wails, enveloping me, closing in until I thought I might suffocate beneath the weight of their sorrow. Remember us. The voice emerged from the very glass, a howling torrent that clawed at my sanity. As if answering, the mirror rippled violently, images blurring and colliding. I staggered back, heart racing, panic blooming in my chest as the swirling chaos settled, drawing me in. Each figure from the past emerged, mouths moving rapidly, their shared agony vibrating through my very essence, but their words remained cryptic, their messages scrambled, lost in the tumult. Find the key, they murmured in a haunted echo. Unlock the memories, free them. The floor trembled beneath me, the very foundation of this malevolent place shuddering as if it, too, was in the throes of an awakening. I couldn't tell if the house was alive or if it was merely a tomb hosting the echoes of sorrow. The shadows clamored closer, hunger and desperation swirling in their forms, forming a wall that pressed upon me, and just as the terror mounted to a crescendo, the mirror's surface shattered, a cacophony of glass raining down around me, the shards piercing the air like daggers. In that terrifying moment, I sensed a presence rising from the depths of the shattered reflect-ion, a dark figure emerging from the mirror's recesses, eyes gleaming with an unfathomable hunger. As it loomed over me, the voices crescendoed into a frenzy, rising in pitch as they cried out in unison. Remember, remember, remember. And in the haunting silence that followed, I understood the true horror lay ahead, a past that must be unraveled, and I would soon face a choice darker than I could have ever imagined. The darkness closed in, and in the depths of despair, I felt all hope slip away. Before I could act, the ground beneath me opened wider, and a new abyss beckoned like the yawning maw of the unknown, and then there was nothing but the darkness swallowing me whole. My senses reeled as I fell into the chasm below, yet this descent was different. Unlike the first, it was merciless, an unyielding current of blackness that swept me away, clawing at my very essence. The air turned frigid, biting deep into my skin until all warmth fled, leaving me chilled to the core. As the void finally spat me forth, I landed not on solid ground, but rather a mass of something slick and undulating, alive beneath me. Gasping, I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding. The fog here was more sinister, thick and cloying, wrapping around me like a lover's embrace gone horrifically wrong. I could taste the dankness in the air, a bitter concoction that tasted of decay and despair. As I looked around, my surroundings materialized into a grotesque parody of the familiar twisted forest that seemed to whisper secrets only to the monsters lurking within its depths. The trees swayed unnaturally, their branches twisting like the skeletal fingers of the damned reaching for me. In the distance, I heard the cry of a child, high-pitched and laden with terror, piercing the silence like an arrow. I turned instinctively, drawn toward the sound, a moth to a flame, knowing it was a beacon of dread. The voice grew louder, blending with the soft murmurs of the forest, pulling at threads of forgotten memories yet tangled in my mind. Help me. Please. The panic in that voice burrowed into my gut, igniting an urgency I couldn't shake. I pushed through the underbrush, gnarled roots and thorns snagging at my clothes as if eager to hold me back, to prevent my revelation. Each step deeper into the forest had a palpable weight, dragging down my spirit, a malevolence thickening the air. I could sense eyes watching, lurking just beyond the veil of shadows. Then the forest opened up into a clearing, and what I found knocked the breath from my lungs. A colossal tree, its trunk as wide as a house, gnarled and misshapen, bore the scars of time like a third-degree burn. Carved into its bark were faces twisted and anguished, their mouths silently screaming. I edged closer, horrified as the faces contorted, their hollow eyes meeting mine, a collective sorrow sweeping through the clearing. Release us, they pleaded, their voices a cacophony woven from despair. Tremors coursed through me, chilling my blood. I reached out instinctively, fingers brushing against the coarse surface, feeling energy ripple through the wood. And at that moment, a deep vibration echoed from deep within the earth, a low growl that rumbled like a storm in the distance. Before I could process the danger, the ground split open with a violent crack, sending shards of rock and soil tumbling into the abyss below. From that chasm emerged tendrils, not roots, not vines, but long slithering arms that reached out, grasping toward me with an unnatural sense of desperation. It felt as if the very heart of the forest was awakening, seeking something from mesomething buried deep within the caverns of my mind. Remember. The faces whispered again, their haunting chant mingling with the howling winds, a desperate plea that clawed at my sanity. That I stumbled back, heart racing as I evaded the grasping limbs and the sense of foreboding that deepened like a pit in my stomach. In my frantic retreat, I tripped over a protruding root, tumbling to the ground just as they lunged forward, nearly catching my ankle. I scrambled up again, adrenaline surging through my veins, urging me relentlessly away from the treacherous maw, but the woods had shifted, the path disappearing into dense thickets and the whispers turning into unintelligible babble, a haunting cacophony that warned me of approaching despair. I staggered onward into the gloom, panic becoming my only guide. Then I saw a flickering light in the distance, illuminating a small wooden cabin cradled between the trees. Its facade was weary, the windows dotted with grime and decay. Yet there was promise in that glow, a lifeline entangled in the shadows. I stumbled toward it, the fog gripping at my legs in a futile attempt to hold me back. As I crossed the threshold, the warmth of light enveloped me, offering temporary solace, a sanctuary cocooned against the dark outside. The interior was simple yet suffused with a sense of unease. An old fireplace sat empty, its mantle lined with photographs that hung askew. I approached them, eyes widening as I recognized the faces, each one marred by tragedy, gazing out with hollow expressions akin to those in the trees. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang, the sound echoing through the cabin like a death knell. The warmth of the light grew cold instantaneously, the air thickening with the weight of unseen presences. My heart raced, realizing I was not alone. "Help us," a whisper coiled around my very soul, and then the photographs began to twitch, the faces shifting to reveal sorrow so profound it was a palpable thing, reaching out to me from behind the glass. The walls groaned, shadows converging upon me like hungry wolves closing in on their prey. Fear clawed at my insides as I whirled around, desperately searching for an escape, until every door and window began to pulse as one, the cabin itself constricting around me, as if it too had become an entity intent on ensnaring its newest captive. "Remember, remember." The voices bled into a single, shrieking mantra, an unbearable crescendo that surrounded me, drowning me in darkness, before I could react. A figure emerged from the corner, a shimmering silhouette, barely defined yet undeniably real. Its eyes glowed, a spectral beacon of light amidst the encroaching shadows, and within that moment of clarity, everything drew to a sharp point. "Find the truth," it intoned, voice laced with urgency, "but beware the cost of remembering." As it reached out toward me, I could feel the shadows shifting, swirling with renewed ferocity. The cabin trembled, creaking as if about to implode under the weight of secrets long buried. The whispers grew deafening, a cacophony tearing at the seams of reality itself, and just as I moved to grasp the figure's hand, the floor beneath me crumbled, plunging me into a darker abyss where the very fabric of existence frayed like worn thread, where the path to truth twisted and splintered into an unfathomable void. And in that moment, it became clear this journey was just beginning. I fell through the void, spiraling into darkness that enveloped me like a shroud. Time lost meaning, moments stretching into eternity as I tumbled through an endless expanse of chaos. My heart thundered in my chest, drowning out the sickly whispers that taunted me, fragments of forgotten warnings slicing through my consciousness like shards of glass. With a sudden jolt, I hit the ground, landing with a thud that echoed through my bones. I blinked against a harsh glare, finding myself in a barren wasteland steeped in a sickly twilight, the horizon flickering like a malfunctioning lamp casting eerie shadows. The landscape was warped, twisted, skeletal trees clawed at a bruised sky where the sun was a mere memory. The air was heavy with despair, a suffocating blanket of sorrow, and an oppressive silence stretched around me, broken only by the echoing cries of the damned. I staggered to my feet, dread pooling in my stomach as the barren ground shimmered beneath my touch, warmth emanating from it as if it breathed. "Please," a voice broke through the silence, soft yet desperate. It echoed off the crumbling cliffs nearby, taunting the ache of hunger and fear in the churning pit of my stomach. I followed the sound, heart racing, stepping over jagged stones that seemed to reach for me as I moved. The voice led me to the edge of a blackened ravine, its depths obscured by an inky mist that slithered like serpents. I peered over the edge, instinct screaming at me to back away as cold tendrils of fear wrapped around me. Below, I caught glimpses of twisted forms writhing in agony, shadows that screamed without sound, trapped in an eternal dance of torment. It was then that I saw her, a girl, no older than 10, with hollow eyes that seemed to absorb all light. She was crouching on a ledge, a small figure dwarfed by the terrors surrounding her. "Help!" she cried, reaching toward me. "You have to save us." My breath hitched in my throat, and a tidal wave of recognition washed over me. She resembled someone from my past, someone I had lost, but the details dissolved like smoke. Only the desperation in her eyes remained vivid. "What happened to you?" I shouted, but my voice was lost to the abyss. The girl pointed a trembling finger into the mist. "You have to go deeper, you must find the truth." Her voice morphed into a chorus, resonating with other echoes that rose from the chasm, blending into a haunting melody, a song of sorrow that pricked at the edges of my sanity. Before I could answer, a rumble echoed through the ravine. I stumbled back as the ground beneath me quaked, ringing with the unspoken fears of the lost souls. The shadows surged forward, swelling like a tidal wave of darkness, and in an instant, the girl was swallowed by the mist, her final cry lingering in the air like a curse. I turned to run, desperate for escape, but the landscape warped around me, causing my surroundings to undulate as if alive, all sense of direction slipping away. The chilling whispers grew louder, chanting a rhythm that echoed off the ravine's walls, pressing in on me. I was ensnared in an ancient trap, a labyrinth of grief that twisted my very essence. Panic clawed at my throat as the shadows began to coalesce, forming vague shapes of anguish that lunged at me from all around. An overwhelming dread washed over me. I could feel their sorrow as if it were my own, a shared remembrance of suffering that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. I sprinted forward, searching for an escape, for anything that might lead to salvation, but the shadows were relentless, their droning voices entwining with my thoughts, thickening the air until each breath became a battle against despair. "You must remember, the truth lies buried," they whispered, merging with the sudden cacophony of screams rising from the depths of the chasm. In that moment, the ground fractured once more, a fissure tearing through reality as a blinding light erupted from below. The shadows recoiled, a momentary reprieve, and I was drawn toward that light like a moth. I dashed, the tendrils of darkness grasping at my ankles, but I had no time to look back. I leapt across the widening gap, fingers stretching toward the brightness as I felt the darkness clawing at my fading resolve. The light enveloped me, blinding and pure, but as I reached it, a cold laughter erupted from behind me, sinister and knowing. "Leaving so soon?" The voice slithered through the air like venom. I was suddenly plunged into a realm where the boundaries of reality and nightmare intertwined, a corridor stretching into infinity, lined with doors. Each door pulsed with a rhythm, a heartbeat that resonated with the cries of those trapped beyond. I knew with creeping dread that behind each threshold lay another horrific truth. Each choice would unearth deeper fears, darker memories. Before I could pause to gather my fraying thoughts, a figure appeared before me, its face obscured yet somehow familiar. "Choose wisely," it warned, voice echoing through the hall, a chill seeping into my bones. "For what you seek lies in the shadows of your own making." As the figure faded, I stood trembling, heart hammering in my chest, faced with endless doors whispering my name. I reached for the nearest one, hand trembling as I grasped the knob, uncertainty rippling through me like an impending storm. Behind me, the whispers crescendoed, each shadow straining against the walls of their confinement, ready to pounce at any moment. With one brave leap of faith I swung the door open, step taken into the void, a shattering scream ushering forth from the shadows behind me, and then, it was gone. The heartbeat of the realm stilled. I was left alone in silence, one door closed forever, a truth untold waiting to be unearthed in darkness. The darkness behind the door enveloped me like a thick fog, swallowing any remnants of light. Each breath felt laborious, the stale air clawing at my throat as I took a cautious step inside. The door creaked ominously, sealing behind me with a finality that sent a shudder down my spine. I had no choice but to face whatever awaited in this murky abyss. As my eyes adjusted, I saw that I stood in a long corridor, the walls lined with mirrors that pulsed with a faint, sickly glow. The reflections twisted grotesquely, distorting my image into abominable versions of myself. I took a shaky breath, desperately fighting the urge to glance back at the door that had just closed. The tangible fear gnawed at me, knowing that whatever followed was patient and predatory. Then I heard it, a distant sobbing, melancholic and heart-wrenching. The sound floated through the air, wrapping around my senses like an intimate embrace. It was a taunt, both cruel and inviting. I followed the noise, the darkness deepening with each step, concealing my surroundings into a velvet void. As I walked, echoes of laughter and cries intertwining with the sorrow filled the corridor, creating a cacophony that wormed its way into my skull. With every step, my heart raced, caught between the urge to flee and the insatiable curiosity driving me deeper into the nightmarish realm. At the end of the corridor, I found a room bathed in shadow, the source of the weeping now palpable. It beckoned me closer, a void crafted of torment and twisted souls. In the center of the room sat a child, no more than 6, with matted hair and a face streaked with dirt. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and haunting, reflecting a pain that felt familiar yet foreign. "Help me," she implored, her voice a ghostly whisper that echoed in my ears. "They won't let me go. They know your name." My legs felt heavy as I approached her, fear entwined with an instinct to protect. Who were they? And why did she mention my name? "What do you mean? Who knows me?" I asked, kneeling beside her, heart pounding painfully in my chest. The child pointed a trembling finger towards the far wall, where shadows twisted unnaturally. "They're waiting for you to remember," she murmured. "The truth is buried under their lies. They want you to come home." Her voice trailed off, replaced by the dissonant chorus of laughter that echoed from the dark corners of the room. A wave of understanding washed over me, cold and bitter. The memories I had fought so hard to forget crashed into my mind like a storm, memories of loss, of guilt and grief, of faces fading into nothingness. I had buried my past, but this cursed place was resurrecting it, forcing me face to face with traumas I had long since buried. Stay away from them, she cried, her voice rising in urgency as the shadows flickered with anticipation. They want to pull you back into the dark, but it was too late. From the corners of the room, tendrils of shadows began to slither closer, curling around the child's feet, whispering sweet nothings that held a sinister edge. The walls pulsed with an unnatural breath, and I felt the sinister energy creeping in, trying to breach my defenses. No. I shouted, grasping for her hand, desperate to pull her from the shadows that tightened their grip. I won't let you go, the child's face twisted in anguish, her form flickering like a candle in a storm. You must go, please. They will take you too, if you stay. But the shadows tightened their embrace, suffocating her voice in an eerie silence. Suddenly, the ground beneath us rumbled violently, the air thickening with the scent of decay. The shadows roared to life, indistinguishable forms rising from the darkness, eyes glimmering with a ravenous hunger. Fear pooled in my stomach as I realized I was outnumbered. Run. Don't look back. The child screamed, her voice now a pained echo as the shadows closed in. I hesitated, torn between the urge to stay and save her and the primal instinct to flee. Heart racing, I turned, racing towards the far wall of the room, each step trembling with uncertainty, glancing back just in time to see the shadows literally absorbing her into their form, her terrified expression searing into my mind. As I reached the end of the corridor, I felt the cold fingers of darkness grasping at my ankle. I swung around, desperate to break free from whatever had me trapped. The echoes of the child's cry melded with the malicious laughter that now filled the room like an insidious fog, overwhelming my senses. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I lunged towards the next door I saw, flinging it open with a force fueled by terror. But what waited on the other side would tear at the very fabric of my soul. In an instant, the air shifted, and I was plunged into a haunting vision. Memories reborn. I stood in the midst of a twisted family reunion, faces I once loved now grotesque and unrecognizable. Hollow smiles carved into their features, void of the warmth I remembered. Then the laughter began, in a cacophony that thrummed with malice, and their eyes turned to me, filled with unholy knowing. Welcome home, they sang in unison, their voices echoing in harmony with the shadows that writhed just beyond the door, ready to swallow me whole. The walls began to close in around me, darkness waiting with bated breath. I stumbled back through the surreal distortion of time and memory, each step resonating through me like the toll of a bell marking an unholy hour. Despair engulfed me as I twisted and turned in the depths of the suffocating darkness, fighting against a tide of sorrow clawing at my very essence. The laughter of my twisted loved ones echoed like a haunting dirge in my mind, demanding recognition, seeking to anchor me to their eternal torment. Desperate to escape from the nightmarish scene of distorted homecomings, I sprinted back down the corridor, through doors that pulsed with energy, their silent screams somehow resonating with the ghosts of my past, urging me onward. I had to confront the truth, the reality lurking just beneath the surface of those memories I had hidden for so long. As I emerged into a new darkened space, I was met with a chilling echo of realisha living room exactly like mine, worn and nostalgic. Dust motes danced in the stray light filtering through the windows, and the art on the walls was hauntingly familiar. I took a hesitant step inside, drawn despite the clanging alarm bells in my head. But then I froze, as the room around me morphed, solidifying into a scene I couldn't begin to fathom. The voices returned, an unsettling hum that cut through the air, and there they were, me family, sitting in the very same spots they had always occupied. Their expressions were strained, but their eyes spoke of unending desperation, pleading silently for recognition amidst the swirling shadows. I felt something shift inside me, a quivering realization gnawing at the fringes of my memory. Join us, they whispered as shadows flickered in their peripheries, feasting on the emotions that surged through, mellow intertwined with guilt, joy subsumed by sorrow. Suddenly, the woman materialized, her malevolent grin sharp in the dim light. You've come home again, dear, she crooned, moving closer, each step an anchor that pulled me deeper into her intoxicating dark embrace. But the truth remains, what you've buried runs deeper than you dare acknowledge. That I cringed, recoiling at her penetrating gaze as it sliced through my carefully constructed layers of self-protection. Her voice slithered into my psyche, almost inviting. You can't keep running from what's inside of you. My thoughts spiraled into a frenzy. What did she mean? A tangled knot of fears and forgotten laughter bubbled up. Memories of my family laughing around the dinner table morphed into images of tragedy, quarrels, silenced cries, the feeling of abandon clawing at my soul. It began to dawn on me, I hadn't just lost them, I had lost myself in the wake of what had come to pass. You can free them, you know, she continued, sensing my turmoil. Remember the whispers, remember why you chose to forget. The darkness grew heavier, shadows creeping closer, enveloping the edges of my family's forms as they began to dissolve, turning into mere wraiths held captive in purgatory. What do you want from me? I shouted, my voice fraying against the oppressive weight of their fading hope. Only the truth, my dear, the woman replied, her expression shifting to something resembling pity, a cruel mockery of empathy. Will you embrace it, or will you forever be caught in this endless cycle? In that moment, the world around me fractured, and the whispers of my family turned into screams as they faded into the abyss that gathered in the corners of the room. The shadows shrieked, feeding on my hesitation and despair, igniting a flicker of understanding. They were my choices, my repercussions, the events that had led me to this juncture of monstrous fate. I began, but a voice cut through the fog, warm and familiar. Please, don't leave us. The child's face rose in my mind, the little girl I had seen, her haunted eyes reflecting an innocence lost. She had been trapped, but also a part of me. You must remember, she echoed, filling me with a longing so deep it threatened to swallow me whole. That I clutched my head, memories flooding, visages of my family laughing off the night we had lost the most precious moments to. Darkness. In the chaos of my buried regrets, faces flashed before me, the love, the losses. How had I let them seep away? The memories converged, unlocking a torrent of anguish that crashed over me, the overwhelming weight of their sadness pulling me into the depths. Take my hand, a voice whispered, and in that desperate moment, I understood everything. With a steely resolve, I stretched out my hand towards the fleeting wraiths of my loved ones, a silent promise swirling at the edge of my being, but as I made contact, the shadows surged, filling me with despair and madness, the echoes of their dark laughter melting into an unholy harmony. You can't let them go. The woman's voice dripped with malice, every syllable, a snare whose grip tightened. Shadows danced violently, intertwining with my memories, twisting them into nightmares until I was fighting against my own reflection in the obscured mirrors of my past. The room twisted, suffocating me in regret as the laughter reached a deafening crescendo, a mass of darkness closing in. Join us, they chorused, voices merging as an unholy hymn rose to drown me, filling the room with an unspeakable horror. This was its last choice. But as my vision swirled into madness, a singular thought penetrated through the chaos. I had to embrace the truth, unleashing the pain that had long haunted my heart. Trust, love, forgiveness, everything I had cast aside for the sake of safety, and with that understanding, I screamed into the tumult, the sound echoing against the shrill laughter that surrounded me. I remember. I cried, and the void shook as if confounded by the resolve that surged through my veins. The riptide of shadows recoiled, shifting as they began to twist into something far more human. I felt the truth colliding against the darkness, waves of cathartic release flowing from my core, memories I had silenced now crashing forth, filling the air with clarity. A light ignited, illuminating the room and exposing the shadows for what they were, my own whispering fears manifested, desperately seeking recognition, seeking love. In that moment of salvation, the oppressive darkness shattered, the hold of shadows dispersed into ethereal wisps, revealing my loved ones, their faces softened and bathed in light as the deluge of memories began to spill forth, releasing them from the void. Yet as they transformed before me, the woman's laughter echoed once more, haunting and lingering, her eyes glimmering with unholy delight. You've revealed your truth, but the darkness will always linger. Who are you without it? I felt the finality of her words settle heavily within me, realizing the unshakable bond that lay between light and dark, joy and sorrow, within my very soul. Just then, I caught one last glimpse of my familiar fleeting moment of acceptance passing among them. But in the depths of my heart, I knew the battle against the shadows was far from over. the journey had forever changed me, amplifying the echoes of love and loss. And as I turned to face the vast expanse of what lay ahead, a chilling reminder echoed in my mind: the darkness would never truly vanish. It whispered through the twilight, "Come home."